And so it is a bit of a curious spot at the moment for John O'Driscoll. It still shows him as a spectator, meaning he does run the risk of effectively having an exhibition run here where it won't count his laps up against the rest of the drivers, meaning he'll stay on the charts at least last of this race, but still stands the chances here to gain considerable wads of position. Now, we've seen it to be almost customary for him to start from the back over on VSR. You see just out of Lesmo 1 and 2, down the Curva del Seraglio for Vickery. Bear in mind, he only led that session in free practice by about 32 thousandths over the Ferrari of Sabil. So that's going to be an interesting one. Out through the Variante Ascari, then turns 8, 9 and 10. We've seen that to be a real kicker for some drivers over the course of the last couple of visits we've had here to Monza in a few different championships. That has been a make or break zone. A lot of people chalk it up to being down at the Variante Rettifilo. That really only stands around lap 1 to 5, and even in that sense that thins out very, very quickly, where we actually see the bulk of our incidents as the race gets going is down at Ascari, because especially for the mid-engine cars, as we've seen historically, it has been quite a big nuisance there. Very easy for you to find yourself running sideways out through turns 8, 9 and 10, potentially into a wall on several such occasions. Vickery then lays in that first time of qualifying, 148.445 for the Mustang. Following in his trails then Antonio Cardoso, 190 thousandths off, and there we see it was momentarily third for Daniel O'Brien, but he's down to fourth. Donnie Linton up to third with BMW. Next to the line, the 112. That'll be Rudolf Lanieks for Ford. To the line he goes and stays fifth place there. Was provisionally fifth, now stays it. Next to the line, Pete Morgan. Garage 58, McLaren on his way to the line. Number 720, sixth fastest. Next, coming up, Liam Morrissey in the number 777 McLaren. Where does he place himself across the line? Seventh fastest. Then in his wake, we see from behind there the number 11, Alfie Graham, sixth fastest there. Number 28 from behind them, that was Sabil. Willie Hoke Sabil Racing, now fifth fastest. From behind them, Alessandro Litti with Lamborghini. Now, we've seen to be one of the major issues with Lamborghini is a bit of an anemic top end. About bringing back up those charts, you'll note that there is some gaps in the data we have, but we are able to fill that up with what we've been able to gather over the last couple of seasons in a few different areas of our coverage to patch those holes, as it were, in the data that we have on straight line speed. Lamborghini fall in behind McLaren at this time, around 170 to 171 miles per hour. Now, they can push to 172, but it is quite a considerable push. A lot more effort is required to fine-tune a setup like that than you would find out of, for example, the cars around them in that sense. McLaren, Bentley, Lexus, BMW, the list really does go on. Cardoso down towards the line. We'll see here for AMG. They find themselves in and around where Aston Martin is at the bottom of the charts. They're about 172 miles an hour. Again, not a bad baseline to have. Across the line he goes. Maintains second fastest. Most recently, we saw for Lewis Mackenzie, third fastest for McLaren. Now, time flies when you're having fun, and no truer word has been spoken here, as we have already burnt through 6 minutes of this 10-minute qualifying session. We're entering the final quarter not far from now, with about 3 minutes 45 left to go here in Monza before 30 minutes of racing to follow. Of course, we'll have that 5-minute break where we'll be talking about the current scope of things in the 94th running of the Monte Carlo Rally. We're big rally fans here on TRTN. Do look forward to the opportunity to chat about that. Most recently, we've just seen there a Ford 1-2 now solidified by the 1-1-2 of Rudolf Lanieks, now second fastest. The Latvian tucks in behind Vickery for a Ford 1-2 at this current time. Bear in mind, most recent improvements now put him about 420 thousandths away from Vickery. Cardoso makes third at the moment. What's going to be a mixed second row, McLaren and Mercedes. BMW rounding out the top 5 at this time. Nearest to the line then, the number 420, John O'Driscoll. And it's a precarious spot for him because still registered as a spectator. But unlike our Aston Martin that shows up only on the screens, O'Driscoll is a much more physical presence of today's field. Despite making his way across the line to put another time on the charts, he still stays in 14th. So let's have a look at what it could be had it not been today's outlying circumstances for O'Driscoll. Well, 1.291 seconds, that would put him just in behind O'Brien, and that would make him 7th place at the moment, faster than his fellow Ferrari. That's Willie Hoke Sabil in the number 28, currently 7th on this field as it stands. So whether he likes it or not for O'Driscoll, he's going to find himself somewhat of a slave to convention. What he's been able to do in the last couple of seasons, especially in season 10 of VSR, has been great results starting from the back. And now in his one opportunity to do the opposite of that, he's stuck back into it. So he has kind of got the odds against him here. It's going to be somewhat of an exhibition run for O'Driscoll, but we've seen in quite a few different occasions, especially in VSR, just how strong a talent he can be no matter where you place him on the field. We saw most recently up to 6th then for, I believe, that was O'Brien. Actually, no, that's not a recent improvement. Then O'Brien was 6th before. Linton now 4th ahead of Mackenzie. Cardoso 3rd. Laniax is closing the gap over Vickery at this time. That's 80 thousandths of a second. We're talking 800ths, just under a tenth of a second. The time it takes to blink is in and around 100 to 140 thousandths of a second for most people. So this is blink and you'll miss it territory up on the front row here. Sabel 3rd fastest now, so closing the gap over Ford, putting Ferrari in 3rd place. Ferrari's closest rivals in the automotive world, Lamborghini, find themselves straddling 8th place at this time. Alessandro Litti lining up on that 4th row by the way things look at this time. He's 3 tenths up the road over Alfie Graham in the number 11 car. Nearest to the line then, the number 77 Vickery in that GT40 homage on his Mustang GT. And the resemblance is definitely there. You see him coming around the curve of Parabolica here, and you can see it is very close, as a matter of fact, as it would look to the older Mark II GT40. 30 seconds left to go then. Vickery across the line. Sadly to no improvement, but he has got one more shot at things from behind him. The 111 goes fastest. It's fastest for Cardoso with Mercedes. Antonio Cardoso usurps the fastest time on the penultimate running of qualifying here in round 1 of season 3 by 38 thousandths over Vickery. Now that has come as definitely some upset for Ford at this time. And with Rudolf Laniax peeling into the pit lane, that's brought an end to his qualifying session. Vickery's still out on track for one more push here, and now he's got the stakes against him. He needs to find 38 thousandths over his personal best, which so far has been, for the longest time, a seemingly impenetrable glass ceiling of this qualifying session. Now to retake pole position off of Antonio Cardoso, physically on track, trailing on that 77. Across the line a moment ago, Willie Hoke Sabel Racing, 28 car, 4th fastest at the end of this session. So nearest to the line, we'll be catching back on board with the 77 down the Curva de Saraglio. Vickery now has definitely got a push. Otherwise, he was hunting down just an extension of the gap between himself and his fellow Mustang, but now it is a fight for pole position. You can see down through Ascari, taking things nice and easy, trying not to get a track limits invalidation in this final lap. So down towards the line he goes. Can it be enough for Edward Vickery? With the odds stacked against him, down towards the line he goes. In the number 77, 38 thousandths needed, and he couldn't find but one of them across the line. The 111 into the pit lane, and it looks to be the case. Mercedes on pole here in Monza. Crossed the line a moment ago, or I think into the pit lane as it stood, was Donnie Linton in the BMW, the number 10 car, 5th fastest at the end of this session. But what an upset that's come to be for Ford. They were looking at a 1-2 start for this race coming up. And now it's the case where Mercedes have taken them both for ransom by 38 thousandths. Front to back, the podium divided by less than 2 tenths of a second, just a little over a tenth, 118 thousandths to be precise. So at the end of qualifying, we've got about 5 minutes worth of break time here. Taking a look just quickly back into the session itinerary. We've just come out of 10 minutes of an exciting opening qualifying session. And now on that 5-minute break, it's time for us to discuss the WRC. Now, looking into the 94th running of the Rally Monte Carlo after 9 stages so far, just at the second leg of the first round of the 2026 World Rally Championship, it is looking to be an exciting one indeed. Currently, the standings are as follows from first 1st to 10th overall. Oliver Solberg, Elfyn Evans, Sebastian Ogier, Adrian Formeau, Thierry Neuville, John Armstrong, Hayden Paddon, Leo Rossell, Eric Camilli, and Nikolai Gryazin. That's 3 Rally 2 cars in the top 10 overall. It has been a very bizarre opening round of the championship. Weather has been on the fritz. We've had ice, we've had slush, we've had dry tarmac, and we've had almost impenetrable fog through the night time. It has made for one of the most diverse rounds of the championship we've seen, kicking things off here in Monte Carlo. Oliver Solberg leading as well on his drive with Toyota. This was hotly awaited out of the 2025 World Rally Championship, where he took a breakout victory in Estonia. This is set to be a very exciting drive. Of course, Oliver Solberg, son of 2003 World Rally champion Petter Solberg, the last ever driver to win a World Rally Championship with Subaru back in 2003. And that has immortalised the Impreza alongside such legendary performances as that of Colin McRae and Richard Burns. Those 3, the only 3 drivers in history in the WRC to take championships with the iconic Impreza. Looking at things as well, hunting down his 10th championship has not been an easy start to things for Seb Ogier, 3rd fastest and behind the championship runner-up of last season, Elfyn Evans and Scott Martin. That makes a Toyota 1-2-3 in Rally 1 at this time. In Rally 2, things have shaken up massively, as for the first couple of stages, it was a 1-2 lead for Lancia, courtesy of Nikolai Gryazin and Johan Rossell. Now, Leo Rossell leads with another Stellantis group car, the Citroen C3, ahead of Eric Camilli with Skoda, and Gryazin falls to 3rd in Rally 2. It was a rough start as well for Takamoto Katsuta. He was fastest in shakedown and had very high promise coming into this, but over the course of stage 9 of the La Bâtie de Fort Aspremont 2 stage, he suffered a power steering failure that ultimately has knocked him down in this rally to 12th overall, down 3 positions since stage 8. He's now behind Gregoire Munster and Louis Luca, who are on part-time drives for Ford. Speaking of Ford as well, John Armstrong is 6th fastest in this rally. Ford have been quite a mixed bag, especially over the course of last season when it was Munster and McAlean. But looking at it now, John Armstrong getting his first Rally 1 drive has really proven to be quite the exciting step in the right direction for Ford at this time. Him and co-driver Shane Byrne have been on fire here in Monte Carlo. Not far off a chance as it stands right now, with continued troubles for Hyundai, and for that especially of Thierry Neuville, currently now having fallen to 5th away from 4th behind his teammate Adrian Formeau. There's the chance that Ford could see a top 5 by the end of the 3rd leg tomorrow. So that's definitely a lot to consider coming up later down the line. Of course, I think 2 more days coming of the Monte Carlo Rally before we see the first winner of the 2026 season in the World Rally Championship, all to follow in due course. Well, with about a minute and a half left to go here before the formation lap and 30 minutes of racing ahead of us, let's get a look at the grid so far. And it's Antonio Cardoso on pole position. It was a sudden shocker in the penultimate lap of this 10-minute qualifying session to put Mercedes at pole position ahead of Edward Vickery, who looked a surefire shot for pole position over the course of that session for the longest time. Rudolf Slaniak's now pushed down to the 2nd row and alongside Willie Hogue-Sabel in 4th place. Donnie Linton 5th, with Litty in 6th, Mackenzie 7th, O'Brien in 8th, Graham 9th, and Morrissey to round out the top 10. Morgan 11th, Scaparo 12th, Barrett 13th, O'Driscoll 14th, and Ambrose in 15th. Wesley Ambrose joined very, very late into this session and seems to have found himself the same victim of this sudden affliction that has caught out some of the new joinings in this session. Both he and O'Driscoll, the 2 Ferraris at the back of the field, the 420 and the 332, both registered as spectators. Given that it's a rather empty commentary box, I beg to differ. Those 2 starting plumb last of this race. Let's go and get on board then. It's going to be a short run down towards the line here. We start just before the Curva Parabolica at turn 11. We're on board with Antonio Cardoso, the 111, fastest out of qualifying by a very, very small margin, mind you. But that's been more than enough for Mercedes at this time. The battle of the V8s over that front row. Mercedes is 6.2, I think 6.3 litre naturally aspirated V8 engine, hailing from the SLS program, leading that charge ahead of a 5.4 litre Ford Coyote motor-derived V8 engine that has been the juggernaut of GT3 here on Assetto Corsa Competizione for the longest time. But they seem to have met their match in the form of Mercedes, but with 30 minutes against the line here in round 1 of 4 of Season 3 of MSC's GT3 season. Let's see how it all unfolds in the opening round then. New horizons for MSC, and with a grid of what is currently 15 cars rolling down towards the line, 30 minutes against the clock, it's going to be madness here in Monza, and we're green and racing here in Italy for the first time this season, and a great start right off the bat by Cardoso. Vickery close in pursuit there, drops immediately into the slipstream. Meanwhile, Sabel and Laniak side by side on the second row. Laniak's getting the upper hand, and that's allowing Donnie Linton to come and carve his way through as we head down towards Retafilo for the first time. It's so close to contact between themselves and the front row. There was a bit of a nudge there between Vickery and Cardoso as we see things down the line relatively clean, all things considered, and that's by the metric of Monza and nothing else. A great start then for Ford at this time. They've stayed close to the Mercedes. A great start for BMW as well. Donnie Linton already getting in and amongst the scrap now up the road from Willie Hoke Saville. We see these two currently in the scrap for 4th place, down towards Della Rosia for the first time. Donnie Linton had a sizable chance there over Laniak's. A bit of a dodgy run on exit, but it looked like trouble in the background for the pair of them. They get turned around, and we see in the background there, that's even more trouble for Porsche down the line. Yellow flags out. Let's get a look on the replays to see what just went on. All the drivers at this time currently making his way back onto the track. There's the Porsche in the bottom right hand of your screen, making his way back onto the track after being turned around at Della Rosia. That's Sebastian Scaparo in big trouble. Back into green flag racing then as he makes his way through the two Lesmos. Through Ascari we see here Lewis McKenzie versus Alessandro Litti. Things have shaped up massively since that incident down at Della Rosia. It's opened up the doors for the top 5 positions here for Lamborghini and McLaren to come and have a go. Meanwhile, up the line, Laniak starts to close the gap over Vickery. And Cardoso currently still in the lead. Something to definitely point out, those two are incredibly close to one another. Let's not take away from what is very abundantly clear on screen at the moment. We are looking at the fight of 1st place. Vickery versus Cardoso, V8 against V8. Germany versus the United States. Mercedes versus Ford. Down towards turn 1. Super late on the brakes. It can't be any hopes there for Vickery. Runs into the emergency runoff, and so too does Cardoso. The pair of them massively overpitting the brakes. In the background there, trouble for, I believe, that was McKenzie. The number 10, Donnie Linton, gets a drive-through penalty for track limits infractions. It is bedlam here in Monza. Donnie Linton now up the road from Rudolf Laniak. He also took the emergency runoff. We see down the line the number 28 still recovering from whatever on earth happened down at Retafilo. Through Della Rosia, we see the top 4 much closer, but that's soon to be a top 3 with Linton subject to that drive-through penalty. You can see hanging on in the background there to the back of the top 5, Alessandro Litti with Lamborghini. 3 minutes, mind you, but 10%, even if that, I think actually 5% of this race in all. And there has been so much going on in such a short amount of time. Looking for Donnie Linton's point of view, he is really closing in time now over Vickery. Laniak's doing the same. We could find ourselves in a bit of a crunch here. Linton with very little to lose in the grand scheme, knowing that his goose is a bit cooked here. 26 minutes to the line and has a drive-through. Caution could effectively be thrown to the wind. We are looking currently at that fight for 3rd place. Linton having to defend away from Laniak, but it's short-lived, as we'll see. Within the next 2 or so laps, he's going to have to come in and serve that drive-through, and we see making his way out through Parabolica, hugging the right-hand side of the track. Could that be a sign? No, he stays out, as a matter of fact. I'm sure that's come as quite the shock to Laniak as well. Number 10, 2 more laps then to serve that drive-through penalty. We still see here with that battle of 3rd place, Laniak's in his slipstream, heading down towards Retafilo. We've seen this to be trouble time and time again. We did have our hopes banked on it being Ascari that brought the most trouble to the field, but we are pleasantly surprised to see things clinging to convention. These two still incredibly close. We'll catch up with them later on. We see Saville back on the charge, now up and around Pete Morgan. Next in design sights, another McLaren. That's Jonathan Barrett in the number 3 up the road there, just in the foreground. Meanwhile, John O'Driscoll has actually made up position, so it wasn't a case where the laps would not be counted for the car's quote-unquote class to spectators. We see here in the case of John O'Driscoll, he is able to actually fight for positions with the drivers around him. Lewis Mackenzie up in front of him. Problem is with these McLarens, so many of them running the stock livery, very difficult at a far glance here to tell them apart. The 28 was the one in trouble. That was the Ferrari of Willie Hoke Sable. You see in the background there with the 296. That was our mistake on our end. Out through Lesmo 2, down the curve to Saraglio. O'Driscoll, 0.8 of a second from Mackenzie. There could be that fight on the charts not far from now. Getting a look back up just briefly into the top 5 just to see what the scope of things is looking like. Cardoso leads by 1.1 seconds. We see very close at hand behind is that ongoing fight for third place between Linton and Laniax. This is quite a curious one. That 19% restrictor is keeping Ford at arm's length here away from Mercedes out through Parabolica. 1.1 seconds as it stands still between Cardoso and Vickery. You see here potential fight coming up soon, and that is going to be between Alessandro Litti and Daniel O'Brien for the top 5. McLaren versus Lamborghini. And what looks to be a tantalizing match up here for the top 5. Not often is it we get to see Lamborghini and McLaren go head-to-head. I think the last time on record we saw that was, I believe, Vermac v Milliston Season 4 Sunday League over on NLRL. Very short-lived, mind you, as well. As not long after his very short time with Lamborghini, Vermac announced he'd be moving to Ferrari for Season 5. We'll be picking up on that in a few weeks' time. Right now, we're here in MSC Season 3. Down through the Curva Grande. 0.9 of a second between the pair at the moment, so no current estimate of when that fighting will kick off proper. We see here we're not far from it in the case of Rudolf Slaniak, still scrapping with Donnie Linton for third place. Linton still has to serve that drive-through, and he's going to be taking that one right to the very bitter end of it before he can pick up a penalty. And may have just been corrected on that fight behind. Litti has been caught up by half a second by Daniel O'Brien. Now he descends upon him down through the Curva de Saraglio, not too far off whatsoever. So if he can stay in the slipstream range here, there's very few chances that Lamborghini has in holding off the McLaren down the opening straight. We see 2 fights for the price of 1 down through Ascari. Rudolf Slaniak's big chunk of the curve there. A little bit of oversteer for the 112. That doesn't set him too far off the rear end, though, of that number 10 BMW. We see here for the 123 and the 88 still fighting for what is currently 5th place. Looking up the road, we see things are not too distant whatsoever between Cardoso and Vickery. Still, there are chances for Ford to lead here after what was a sudden upset to their balance in qualifying. We see another fight going on down the line here, the 720 versus the 332. Pete Morgan versus Wesley Ambrose. We saw Ambrose to be one of the 2 drivers starting at the back of the field, caught up in an incident down at Della Rosia. Looking up the inside, it is contact between himself and Pete Morgan. Did blindside that 720 there and has thrown him off of his balance through turn 11. Wesley Ambrose right in the rear view here. We're on board with Pete Morgan, the number 720 Garage 58 car down the opening straight. He's just got a little bit more to give in the straightaways over Ferrari. Despite being in that slipstream range, very little that 332 could do at the time. We see emerging from behind them in what is now currently down to 13th place by looks of things there is Donnie Linton, now dropping in behind Sebastian Scaparo. Looking up the lines just briefly again, we see Cardoso v Vickery still at stalemate here, 0.8 of a second, and it's very slow to progress we've seen so far between the Mustang and the Mercedes. Meanwhile, in the fight going on towards what is previously the back of the top 5 is now for 4th place. We're seeing 2 fights for the price of 1, as behind them, Lewis Mackenzie is fighting with John O'Driscoll. We saw a bit of oversteer there on the exit of Lesmo 2 for Daniel O'Brien. That could have been disaster for the Irishman in the number 44. Not number 88, sorry, I should say. Reading too far ahead, still looking for the other McLarens. We see trouble here for Vickery. Just as we cut across to find the McLarens, we see a moment of trouble for Ford. That knocks them down about half a second away from Cardoso in Mercedes at this time. Let's go and catch on board with some of the fights here in and amongst the midfield. We see just outside of that top 5, we see here towards the back of the top 10, as a matter of fact, Barrett v Saville. We see up for 6th place Mackenzie v O'Driscoll, and we see here out just actually into the top 10, I should say, is Morgan v Ambrose. We could be seeing something here down this opening straight. O'Brien on Mackenzie. O'Brien on Litti. In terms of McKenzie v O'Driscoll, that's still very close to one another, as we see side-by-side action here, currently going on for the fight of 4th place in towards the Varianti Rettifilo. 10 minutes into the session so far, and we're not yet starved of action here in Monza. Those who still remain of the grid, you see at the moment we're down to 14 cars of what was 15 here at the start of round 1. Currently in the scrap for 4th place then, O'Brien v Litti. V10 versus V8 here.
Is it?
Through De La Rogia, and you see that little stab over the curbs was enough to knock him off of his balance. And that's what's given up the chances here for now the fight of 5th place coming up between himself and Lewis McKenzie. A fight amongst the McLarens for the last of those top 5 spots. An area of the grid McLaren has struggled to find foothold in, despite being amongst the most numerous of today's grid. Comprising what was, at the start of today's session, just under half of Season 3's grid. Heading in towards Ascari then. Still on board with Daniel O'Brien, trying to close the gap back up to Alessandro Litti in 4th place in the 1-2-3. Meanwhile, Lewis McKenzie and John O'Driscoll are closing in fast in the case of that 44, right upon him on the exit of turn 10 on the run in towards the Curva Parabolica. It's side by side between the McLarens, McKenzie and O'Brien. In towards turn 11 we go. O'Brien holds the inside. McKenzie could be looking for a super late apex to bring it to the inside on the exit of turn 11. And while they've definitely kept their momentum, one driver they failed to shake off their tail, now making a 3-man fight for 5th place is John O'Driscoll. It is a train down towards turn 1 and 2. We go then in towards the Varianti Rettifilo. This could end in disaster with the 2 McLarens side by side. It's very nearly 3 abreast with the Ferrari right on their tail. Meanwhile, it's contact between McKenzie and O'Brien. Through goes O'Driscoll in towards 4th place. 5th, I should say. Disaster strikes then here in Monza. Also turned around in the background was Willie Hogue-Saville in the number 28. He just simply cannot catch a break on this grid. It was a promising sign through free practice for that number 28. Qualifying failed to materialize the proper results he'd been hunting, and the race has been anything but swell. But all is not yet lost for that number 28. He's 9th in this race, still got points to give on the table here. Let's go and catch on board. We see in the background, that was Edward Vickery having a spot of landscaping in his number 77. We catch on board with Rudolf Slaniak, who now descends upon the 77 because of that incident out through Lesmo 2, where the 77 lost control of the rear end, went onto the grass for some time. We see here tiptoeing their way around Ascari, the 2 Mustangs, not looking to throw caution to the wind just yet. Coming up on the halfway mark of this session, things are still lively in the middle of the top 10. We just see here with what could be the proceedings of a fight for second amongst the 2 Fords of today's grid. The 112 of Rudolf Slaniak and the number 77 of Edward Vickery. And it's a curious sign, of course, to see Vickery behind the wheel of the Mustang. Last season, we saw him to be one of the drivers with Lamborghini. So this is definitely quite a diversion in vehicle choice. One that has definitely paid off, though, for Vickery at this time. They head now down in towards the Varianti Rettifilo. You can see in the foreground was the 111, but forced to take the emergency exit, Edward Vickery could lose out second here to Rudolf Slaniak. We wait to see, at least, whether or not he'd be dished out a penalty like we saw with Donnie Linton earlier on in the BMW. We see that to not be the case this time around, and I'm sure that's great frustration for Laniacs, who could have just taken up a free position for very little effort. Fortunately, though, they've still got 16.5 minutes to play with before the checkered flag flies here in the first of 4 races in Season 3. And between the 2 Fords, it is still looking very, very lively indeed. Let's get a look, though, around the field to see some of the other fights going on. Wesley Ambrose versus Donnie Linton for 11th place at this time. 0.6 of a second between the pair. We know the BMW is a very strong contender in the straightaways, and here at the Temple of Speed, it could not be the better spot to be behind the wheel of the M4. It's not been the most swell of rides for the number 10. Of course, took that drive-through penalty earlier on, but now he sizes up his chances to fight for what is currently on the field 11th place. Let's take a look here. There was contact through De La Rogia. Could things get any hairier than that for Linton v Ambrose? In through Lesmo 1, Ambrose runs out wide. That leaves the inside open for Linton. Sweeps in through Lesmo 2. He runs a little bit wide on exit. That does allow Wesley Ambrose to stick into the slipstream. You can see just down the lines that Sebastian Scaparo could be getting in on this soon. 0.1 of a second down the curve to Saraglio between Linton and Ambrose. In towards Ascari we go then. Watching over the rear view of Donny Linton's BMW. So we see trouble there. Wesley Ambrose into the wall. Scrapes the wall. No major impact, but there could be some aero damage for that number 332. And as mentioned there, it does open up the opportunity for Sebastian Scaparo to come and have a go here. You see, since his big move there, double overtake up to 5th place for John O'Driscoll. 3.6 seconds away from him. He can see physically in his iron sights there the 1-2-3 of Alessandro Litti, 4th in this race at the moment. Laniax and Vickery still incredibly close, and meanwhile we see even more trouble. Yellow flags out at Parabolica as there's contact between Scaparo and Ambrose. Would that be a consideration of a pit lane run? As you can see there in the case of Wesley Ambrose, he doesn't think likely. As we hit the session halfway, things are still picking up here in Monza. So taking a look in some of the other battles going on right now, one definitely on the charts is the fight between the 77 and the 112. At their closest, we saw them to be almost dead level for position there, side by side for but a moment between Laniax and Vickery. We see there, oh, what is going on there with the grid? That's a bit of a bizarre one. The server's acting up a little bit. We're on board with John O'Driscoll, and we can see, oh, yeah, I think I know what's going on here. Well, we've just hit past the halfway mark, and a very sizable portion of the grid has just vanished. That is a very odd one. We'll see what race control's word on that is. We'll be closely monitoring the situation. Right now, though, for John O'Driscoll, he is going to be beaming ear to ear because he's been promoted to the race lead. We see rejoining the session is Cardoso and Laniax, and somehow they're still out on track. I'm a little confused here. I mean, it's been a half disconnect. For some drivers, you can see here, Linton, Vickery, Sabel, Mackenzie, I believe as well. They have, actually no, not Mackenzie then. You can see they've reconnected, but in the case of the 111 and the 112 for that matter, Antonio Cardoso and Rudolf Laniax, they've rejoined, still running. So effectively what's happened for them, the rest of the grid vanished for a little while, and they're still here, and now everyone else is back. So it almost a case of, you know, if we want to play pretend here, it's almost like those first two leading cars vanished into a wormhole for about half a minute there, and now they're back on track. They're 1 and 2. Cardoso from Laniax. O'Driscoll promoted to 3rd place then. You can see the tally of that sudden wave of disconnects. Willie Hogue, Sabel, Alessandro Litti, Edward Vickery, Jonathan Barrett. We can see joining them there is Liam Morrissey in the 777. There are many unhappy faces affected by that disconnect wave. But there are in the same stride quite a few happy ones. Namely, it's going to be the 420 of O'Driscoll at this time, as he's looking at the chances today, 12 minutes from the checkered flag of a podium here in Monza. Bear in mind, started from the back alongside Wesley Ambrose, who himself is up to 5th. So these two, they're having a whale of a time here in Monza. But as it stands right now, there's 5 cars left on the grid actually outrunning. The rest having rejoined to make this an 11-car grid. There's 6 cars stuck in the pit lane, grounded effectively for the next 2 or so minutes before they can come out and play. Of course, this is a part and parcel thing with Assetto Corsa Competizione. I think we've been definitely clear of the worst end of it for some time, but it wouldn't be ACC without those signs of aging software when it comes to these server structures. Now, this is not something that Race Control can actively control themselves. This is ultimately down to a provider side issue. They're not making their own servers from scratch. We see, though, O'Driscoll, forced onto the emergency exit, came to a dead stop. We know why he's done that. That one is to show to the game systems, look, I've not gained any time here. You can't penalize me if I haven't gained any time, because that would be like crashing and penalizing me for it. This has been definitely a very bizarre turn of things, all things considered. It's been definitely a bit of an unfortunate callback to the sort of dark ages of ACC in the last couple of years. There was that era where it was at its worst for connection issues. We had, especially I think it was season 2, the Sunday League had rife issues with server stability. And again, race control there couldn't really do an awful lot about it. And that's the same story here. It's not impossible for these things to happen, but the chances are growing slimmer and slimmer. Regardless, it's not made for the greatest of starts then for Season 3 for quite a few on the grid. We do see, though, that the majority of drivers are starting to make their way back out on track. We see Willie Hope Saville back out on track in the number 28 car. We see movement from the paddock there as we see Daniel O'Brien making his way out. And so too is Donnie Linton. We see Liam Morrissey's back on track. So things are slowly returning to normal, but there is a sizable toll paid on the majority of the grid here. You can see for Cardoso, he's about to lap Donnie Linton. You see now, this is Cardoso's point of view, trying to lap around the number 10 over his nose. Donnie Linton. It wouldn't be an MSC race here on TRTN if something bizarre didn't happen. I think I do seem to recall back in Season 2, Laguna Seca, I watched a driver turn into a speeding missile down through the corkscrew. I'm still absolutely taken aback by that. It was such a bizarre incident there. This has definitely been a little bit more on a wider scale of just an isolated crash between two drivers. This has been quite a few drivers now set down a major peg of the journey, but with the grid small enough to accommodate for it in this session, a lot of these drivers aren't seeing too great of a detriment. Of course, a lot of unhappy faces because they've missed out on the opportunity to come and fight again. I think for a lot of drivers, the chances are definitely still there. We see at the moment for Rudolf Laniak's second in the session, promoted to second after that disconnect. He finds himself given present company by Daniel O'Brien just behind him there, now down to 11th in the number 88. See Donnie Linton still holding up the race leader, Antonio Cardoso, with 8 minutes left to go in what has been a very short opening round. 420 of O'Driscoll looking at a podium then as far as things stand between now and the next 8 minutes. Definitely not a bad way to start the season off. Started in the back of the field because of a technicality that considered him as a spectator. That was the same pitfall that hit Wesley Ambrose, but both of them now make the top 5. That should be a 3 and 4 for Ferrari at this time. Ambrose up to 4th. So taking a look at where the grid stands right now, and you can see it's been a huge mix-up. You can see that it still technically shows O'Driscoll and Ambrose to be 11th and 12th, but that's just in the data. We can physically see that they're 3rd and 4th of today's race. So right now that makes it to be the case where Cardoso leads, Laniak 2nd, O'Driscoll 3rd, Ambrose 4th, and then Mackenzie 5th, Sabel 6th, Barrett 7th, Litty 8th, Morrissey 9th, Linton 10th, O'Brien in 11th, and Morgan in 12th. You see here on with Willie Hope Sabel. And considering where his race went before the disconnect, this is not really the worst thing in the world for that number 28. I'm sure he's actually been a very rare occasion here where a driver has disconnected and actually seen some benefit from it. I mean, he was really shoved around in the early parts of that race, caught up in a few incidents that wasn't his fault. He was just sort of caught in the crossfire in those first couple of incidents, especially down at Della Rosia. Now he does find himself, though, in 6th place. Not a bad way to start the season off. Not a bad points position. And fighting within the next 3 rounds, he can still size up his chances of A, top 5, and B, a top 3. I think that is the hopes for a lot of drivers on this grid. Today has definitely not been the best staging point for it. A lot of drivers now will be just looking to see the checkered flag in 6 minutes time and call it a day. We see into the pit lane goes Daniel O'Brien in the number 88. And this one will not be happy, I assure you of that much. We see into the pit lane, the number 88 is in. And it looks to possibly be a case then. With only about 5.5 minutes left of today's race. Could that be the end of the road for O'Brien here in round 1? We'll come to wait and see then. As we see here, Pete Morgan runs out wide through Parabolica in the number 720. Behind him, Jonathan Barrett. He's looking to move up to 11th place then. He'll be overtaking Daniel O'Brien. He lets Jonathan Barrett on through. So we go and catch on board here with the race leader, Antonio Cardoso with Mercedes AMG. Now, closest current company is an attempting to unlap number 10. That is that of Donnie Linton. Normally a terrifying sight to see in the rearview mirror when you're fighting for position, but he's giving it the same kind of vigor we saw in Season 2, just to unlap himself from the leading Mercedes. Coming up on 4.5 minutes left to go of this race, functionally looking at about 3 more laps before the checkered flag. So having a look around the field once again. Now this is just to try and see if there's a suggestion of a top, not even a top 5 fight, just a fight on the grid. But it seems to be the case with so many drivers displaced over the course of the last couple of minutes here, with that very bizarre incident rolling in on the servers. It's a case now where a lot of these drivers are just running to the line here. They're just seeing things out for the end of round 1 and picking back up in round 2. Speaking of looking into that, it's the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps for the second round of the championship. That comes up this time next week. It's going to be an exciting round. Of course, the infamous run up through Eau Rouge and Radion and then up Kemmel Straight. We'll be seeing those drivers once again here in Season 3. Then Misano for round 3 and the Nürburgring for round 4. Very short season, and I think the idea was coming forth. It was a way of getting the feelers out and seeing what the interest was looking like for GT3 at this time. Things were a bit spotty in Season 2 from what I was told, and getting us back in on the project here was a sign of good things to come. The servers haven't played nice today, but the racing, I will say this much, the racing has definitely been a major talking point. Now, it's been a bit brazen, but I would chalk that up to it being Monza over all things. But what we've seen is the drivers are not afraid to get their elbows out. They're not afraid to go toe-to-toe. They're not afraid to give each other a good shove and push. Now, on paper, that doesn't sound great, but it makes for a very wild viewing experience. From us here in the commentary box, Donnie Linton then overtakes Liam Morrissey. That was actually a fight for position, technically. Not that I'm sure the 777 was aware of it, given how everyone has been scattered around the field. He tucks in now behind that of Antonio Cardoso, who I should point out as well has just been unlapped by Donnie Linton. These two are treating it as if it is a fight for the race lead. Looking here with the AMG, the current race leader, and then a lapped number 10. I think what this is showing to us very clear as day here is when you get down to the brass tacks of it, Donnie Linton can absolutely fight with the fastest drivers of this grid. We see, though, big trouble for Cardoso. This could be a prime time opportunity for Rudolf Zlanieks. Let's go and catch on board with the Mustang. Now as he clears to within a second on the leading AMG after a minor spat there in through turn 1 and 2 at the Variante Retafilo. The doors have just been kicked open for a chance here in the last 2 minutes of racing as we come up onto the final lap, not far from now, to a fight of the lead. Out through Della Rosia. Will pressure crack that Mercedes, or will it be a Mercedes victory here in Monza? It can only go one of 2 ways. Watching here from the first driver among them to benefit from that is Rudolf Zlanieks. He and, for that matter, Cardoso vanished into the aether for a few minutes, then came back still leading the charge, but minus Edward Vickery, was fighting with them on the podium. In towards Ascari, this could be an interesting one to see. Meanwhile, just to quickly check in as well on this fight going on here. Now, this isn't for position, it's just Wesley Ambrose getting up and around Pete Morgan through turn 1 and 2. So we'll go and cut back on board with these two, as this is coming up to be the final lap. See, letting them on by there, Liam Morrissey. So we'll stay on board with Laniacs, following in the wake of the race leader at this time, as we cross the line in towards that final lap. here in what has been a very bizarre opening round of 4 here in Season 3 of MSC. Let's stay on board with Laniacs. Late on the brakes there. Could that be a run over the emergency stops? No, he keeps it clear of it, but he does take a little bit of sausage curb with him through turn 1 and 2 at Retafilo. Now, that allows the number 111 to escape upfield there by a second and a half. A far cry of where things stood in the lap just before, where these two were staring down the sights of a potential fight of first place. That could be the earliest warning signs of it fizzling away for the 112. Meanwhile, behind them, Liam Morrissey, front row seats to what could have been the fight of the race lead. You see just up the road at this time, Donnie Linton, soon to be intercepted by Cardoso. Now, I would point this out. He has definitely shown great fighting spirit. Had it not been for that disconnect, he'd be looking at a very solid result in today's race. That'll go up to John O'Driscoll by looks of things there, as he's gone from what is effectively last on the grid to a podium amongst mitigating circumstances, I should point out. That does not take away, though, from what he's been able to do in today's session. We see here, though, with Antonio Cardoso, with Mercedes AMG, it was a huge upset for Ford to see Mercedes usurp them to the front of the field in qualifying. That came as quite the shock to Laniacs and Vickery. But as we make our way down towards the line here, not far from the checkered flag here in Monza, turn 11 coming up not too far from now. It has been a very bizarre race to kick off what is a very short season here in Season 3. One thing is for certain, though, heading down towards the line, it has been a stellar performance today by the 111 of Antonio Cardoso with Mercedes AMG down towards the line here in race 1 of 4 in Season 3. He wins in Monza. A great finish then for Cardoso. The 111 wins in Monza, round 1 of 4 in style with Mercedes AMG. We see Laniacs in second. O'Driscoll looking here. And this is a bizarre one because it shows Mackenzie finishing third. O'Driscoll to the line shows 11th, but I think we both know, looking at that, it was a case where O'Driscoll was, if I'm not mistaken, he was third. It said that he was third. In fact, let's go and look and see that he was third. It might be a little bit warped now. We see O'Driscoll now actually up the road. It's showing some of the drivers haven't actually crossed the checkered flag. I'm still completely confused, mind you. But I know what I saw. I'm of sound mind and conviction to say the like. And we see here for Wesley Ambrose, not far from the line. He was on track in 4th place. The game won't show that for whatever reason. And whatever that spectator glitch has done for the pair of them, it could be the case where if we're going just off of raw game data, just the JSON files for that, it could be trouble for these two as they find themselves looking at actually 11th and 12th. When you and I know it was 3rd and 4th for the two Ferraris of O'Driscoll and Ambrose. It's going to make a very hard to decode top 5. I believe there Mackenzie was 5th, Sabel 6th, Barrett 7th, Litty 8th, Linton 9th, Morrissey 10th, Morgan 11th, O'Brien in 12th in a potential DNF. Okay, so that's... We'll gun with that. We'll wait to see the final cars down towards the line. And that's Donnie Linton. And he had an admirable fight with the race leader, albeit not for position. He crosses the line. You can see it does show a broadly different set of results, but this is what we saw down toward the line here. It was Cardoso wins in Monza, Laniac 2nd, then O'Driscoll 3rd, Ambrose 4th, Mackenzie 5th, Sabel 6th, Barrett 7th, Litty 8th, Linton 9th, Morrissey 10th, Morgan 11th, and O'Brien a DNF. Technically 12th. Well, that is definitely quite a shocker, folks, and a very bizarre thing to break down here as we come to the end of our time. A very odd opening round, but let's not take away from what was an obvious blunder with the servers. Very little that race control could actually do in the wake of things, given those outlying circumstances. Let's look at the positive side of things. The racing was actually quite solid for such a small grid. It does leave a fairly hopeful sign here for Season 3. We're seeing how things progress when we head over to Spa in round 2 next Friday. Then Misano the week after that, and Nürburgring the week after that. But that's all from us here on TRTN. A very short round of things and a very short broadcast indeed, but it has not taken away from what solid racing we had before those disconnects. That's all from us here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care. Good night.
Tonight, tonight.